Hello everyone, and welcome back to the complete Unsolved Iceberg. So today we're doing part 2 of tier 2, and from here, like I said in part 1 of this tier, it definitely gets a lot more bizarre, and you'll see with these entries coming up. Here are all the entries that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about, like I said, the second half of this tier. There's about 40 entries to get through, so without further ado, thank you for watching. Let's get into it. So we're starting off today with the James Garfield assassination. So James Garfield was the 20th president and the second one to be assassinated while in office. Garfield was shot at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. on July 2, 1881. The shooter was Charles J. Guiteau, who believed that Garfield owed him some sort of political debt, and he also wanted to get Chester A. Arthur promoted to president because he believed this political debt would be repaid by Arthur, the debt being getting a place of some sort in the administration. Garfield died 79 days later, and at the time of his death, he had served less than 6 months as the president. Guiteau would be tried, found guilty, and he was hung a year later. Next up we have John Titor. So John Titor was a pseudonym used by an alleged time traveler. He called into Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM in the late 90s, and then went on to post in the Time Travel Institute forums, as well as Art Bell's Post to Post forums around 2000-2001. Titor claimed to be an American military time traveler from the year 2036. He claimed there's going to be many calamities that would happen soon. None of those obviously came to pass, but the explanation for all of this was that our reality was slightly different than the one that he came from. When you go back in time, according to him, some events in our timeline might transpire differently. But as far as who John Titor was, there's many different people that it's believed could have been John Titor, but more than likely this whole story is just an early ARG crafted by several different people calling into Coast to Coast AM, as well as posting on these different early internet forums. Next up we have Kanye Quest. So Kanye Quest is a game that is unlicensed and unauthorized by artist Kanye West that came out July 22nd, 2013. In 2015, it was found by players of the game that if they typed the word Ascension to a certain NPC, they would be taken to a secret section of the game. Once in the secret section, players would be notified that the entire game was a front for this area of the game. They would then be given a QR code that when they screenshotted it or took a picture of it, they would be taken to this dead site that would then track their IP address. The players would then be asked to put other personal information into the game, and it was believed that this information was sent to a group called Ascensionism. Now, what is Ascensionism? Ascensionism is allegedly a cult that was attempting to recruit new members through the game Kanye Quest. However, obviously, like a lot of things on this iceberg, that has never been proven. The more likely case with this, and a lot of cases like this, it's just an ARG, and whoever made this game, a man going by the name Phoenix, was again putting it out as a giant ARG. Now we're on to the case of Caspar Hauser. So Caspar Hauser was a German man who showed up in Nuremberg, Germany in 1828 and claimed to have escaped and lived his entire life in a dungeon. Upon his arrival in Nuremberg, many people questioned his story of growing up in a dungeon. Hauser said that as long as he could remember, he lived in this confined cell and would wake up to find water, bread, and other foods by his bedside. And a lot of people speculated why he could have been kept in that dungeon. Some people believe he could have been some secret prince of some royal bloodline, but whatever the case may be, after living in Nuremberg under the care of a school teacher for a few years, Hauser was mysteriously murdered one night, and after that, there have been no developments in this case. The Kenji Iwamura mystery. In 1989, 2 hikers went missing on Mount Ashahide and were located when rescuers found this giant SOS signal made out of felled trees. Upon being rescued, the 2 men were praised for making this giant signal to get rescued. However, they claimed they had no idea that it was there, right? So a few days later, the rescuers went out again because somebody else had to have been out there. They did find the skeletal remains of a man who went missing in 1984. However, upon looking into this signal more closely, they saw that it only showed up in 1987, meaning that horrifically, it seems like somebody else put this down and unfortunately were never rescued. Kenny Veach in the M Cave. So in 2014, a man left a comment on a video on YouTube titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician" that read the following: "That ain't nothing. I'm a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me. The man who left that comment was Kenny Veach, and after his comment, many other commenters implored him to go out and look for the cave again and to report back his findings. So over 2 other trips, Kenny went out searching for the cave to no avail. Finally, on a 3rd trek, Kenny went out looking for the cave, never to return. Shortly after Kenny's disappearance, a woman claiming to be his girlfriend commented on his M cave hike video, claiming that Kenny went out without proper equipment, he didn't even have his camera with him, and in her opinion, he went out there to take his own life. So whether that unfortunately is what happened, there are still many people that believe that perhaps maybe he did find the cave and found whatever awesome secrets it had within it, and I hope that's what happened, but unfortunately it might not be. The Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar is a pretty big topic, but I'll try to keep it concise. They were a Catholic military order that was founded in 1119, and they existed for about 2 centuries. The Templars were involved in a lot of facets of Christendom, but they are most famous for their involvement in the Crusades. After the Crusades, the Templars lost a lot of public support. A lot of people began to be distrusting of the Templars, with rumors of their secret initiation rituals, among many other things floating around. This distrust, along with a litany of other factors, led King Philip IV of France to pressure then Pope Clement to have the order dissolved. And in doing so, Pope Clement burned a lot of them at the stake. After they had their fill of burning Templars at the stake, they disbanded the order officially in 1312. It's always interesting to me to see organizations like the Templars and the Illuminati that existed so long ago. I mean, like I said, the Templars were dissolved in 1312 for being a secret society that had too many tentacles and all different manners of things, and people today are still somewhat leery and afraid of a Templar order that still exists. At the time, after their disbandment, a lot of people believed that they would move things like the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, that they were involved in a lot of these secret dealings, and that idea still persists today. The Las Vegas shooting. The Las Vegas shooting was a mass shooting that took place on October 1st, 2017, and was orchestrated by a man named Stephen Paddock, who opened fire on a crowd at the Route 91 festival on the Las Vegas Strip in Nevada. Paddock was able to fire 1,000 rounds of ammunition from his hotel room in the Mandalay Bay, killing 60 people and injuring 411. An hour after the final shot was fired, police found Paddock in the hotel room, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His motive still remains unknown today, which has sparked a lot of conspiracy theories on the matter, which is why I'm assuming it is on this iceberg. A lot of people speculate that perhaps, and there's a million speculations, but the main one I've seen floating around is that this could have been some sort of arms deal, some kind of FBI, CIA operation that went wrong, because, again, there was no motive. Nobody around the guy said that they had any inkling that he would do something like this, and the fact that it is the largest mass shooting in U.S. history without any kind of motive established is very fishy, to say the least. The Madeleine McCann disappearance. So Madeleine McCann was a British child who disappeared while her and her family were on vacation in Portugal in 2007. The case was major news in 2007, and it is one of the most heavily reported disappearance cases in modern history. At the time, during the initial investigation, her parents were seen as suspects in the case until that case was thrown out for a lack of evidence. And actually, I don't think the person, illegitimate Time Lord, who made this iceberg knew it at the time, but there's actually a new development in this case, and German prosecutors think that they have actually found the person who kidnapped her. Starting in October 2021, a German prosecutor by the name of Hans Christian Wolters claimed that he believed the man that kidnapped and sadly murdered the young girl is a man by the name of Christian Björkner. As of the making of this video, German prosecutors are allegedly still attempting to bring charges against this man, so who knows, maybe this case will finally get some closure soon. Next up, we have the May Day mystery. So as far as we can tell, from as early as May 1st, 1981, the Arizona Daily Wildcat, which is the student newspaper for the University of Arizona, have published these weird Da Vinci Code-esque ciphers and puzzles every May 1st from then on. While these puzzles usually just appear on May 1st, they've also appeared at random, unscheduled in the student paper. They have themes such as mathematics, the Bible, Tucson and Phoenix hiking maps, coordinate calibration values, certain historical figures, and references to many, many other things. While some people believe it could just be a long-running gag at the student newspaper, which, let's be honest, it definitely is. It's definitely that. It's just a gag. Other people believe that it could be this large secret organization that is trying to put these messages out through this student newspaper. Most of the research into this topic has been done by a man who runs the website maydaymystery.org and claims to have been sent these weird packages as well as semi-threatening letters to tell him to cease his investigations. I'll show some of the images of the packages that he got here. So again, what do you think? Do you think this is some nefarious organization running these, or do you think it is just a college prank? Next up, we have the very enigmatic Men in Black. So if you don't know, the Men in Black are these quasi-government agents that show up to harass and threaten people who have been witnesses of UFOs and other strange phenomena. Many UFO researchers have claimed experiences with these Men in Black coming to their houses and threatening them, and famously Dan Aykroyd, the actor who is very interested in all this stuff, also claimed that he was harassed by these men in black suits. If you want to get a lot of information on the Men in Black, I'd recommend reading The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, where he writes more about the Men in Black than he does the actual Mothman, but there's many, many fascinating stories of encounters people had with these Men in Black in that book. Next up, we have missing cosmonauts. So this theory refers to the fact that some people believe the Soviet Union attempted to launch other manned space flights before Yuri Gagarin, and these people that they launched up there were lost or abandoned in outer space. The Soviet Union was notoriously secretive, so a lot of people believe in order to not garner bad press during the Cold War, they, lost these cosmonauts out in space and decided to just not tell anybody and keep it a secret. There is some evidence that there could have been some missing cosmonauts. However, a lot of the more well-known cases have turned out to be hoaxes. But I would not put it past that, 1950s, 60s Soviet government to do something like this. Next up, we have Mokele Membe. Mokele Membe is a water-dwelling entity that is said to live in the Congo River Basin in Africa. While some people describe it as a living being, others describe it as being closer to a spirit. It's described as being a herbivore and looking a lot like this artist rendition I pulled up here. It became very popular with cryptozoologists as well as young Earth creationists in the early 20th century. The young Earth creationists believe that if they could find this dinosaur-like creature, they could prove that the Earth was not as old as we had previously thought if we had dinosaurs living among us. So there was very bizarrely a time in the 20th century where you had these creationists going out into Africa to try to find this dinosaur, basically to prove that evolution was not real, which I feel like there's, that's a very roundabout way of doing it, but whatever. Unfortunately, obviously nobody's found Mokele Membe. I'll put a video up here of a giant snake that they did supposedly see in the Congo in the mid-1900s, so there's that for you. The Mount Shasta phenomena. Mount Shasta is a mountain in California, which is said to be the home of many a legend as well as odd phenomena. Early legends had to do with the indigenous people believing that one of their gods descended on this mountain and then went on to hurl hot rocks and lava from the mountain, which is very obviously a representation of a volcanic eruption. There are also people that believe that this mountain is connected to the supposed lost continent of Lemuria, stating that inhabitants of the former continent of Lemuria now live in Mount Shasta. In 1931, a man named Harvey Spencer Lewis, who was writing under a pseudonym, wrote a book that was published by the Rosicrucians about how these Lemurians were living under this mountain, and from there, a lot of different occult religions have co-opted this into their belief systems, believing that Mount Shasta is a holy place. Another fun story about Mount Shasta is that there's this man named J.C. Brown, who's a British prospector, who in 1904 stated that he located a civilization of people living under the mountain. Then 30 years later, he told a guy named John C. Root about his, adventures with these people under the mountain, and this led to John C. Root getting this expedition force of about 80 people, gearing them up with all these supplies and base camping in Stockton, California. Then the day before they were to go to Mount Shasta, J.C. Brown did not show up and just disappeared from history. Nobody ever saw him again. So maybe he went without the group and now lives under the mountain. Probably not, but hopefully. Another little fun story about Mount Shasta. There's this guy named Guy Ballard who was an occult teacher who stated that he was hiking on the mountain when he met the Count of Saint Germain, who inspired him to start his occult religion. And if you don't know, the Count of Saint Germain is this alchemist who allegedly is immortal and has lived since, I believe, like the 1400s. He might actually be on this iceberg, so we'll get to him when we get to him. Next up, we have the Nazca Lines. So the Nazca Lines are a group of geoglyphs that are located in the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. They're believed to have been created between 500 BC and 580, and at the time of making this video, they found 80 to 100 of them, but archaeologists believe that there could be a lot more. The nature of these geoglyphs have puzzled people since their discovery, mostly because you can't really tell what these figures are unless you're in the air, and at the time, obviously, the people who created these could not fly above the objects. So this has led to a lot of different alternative explanations for the purpose of these geoglyphs. Famously, Eric von Daniken, who is the writer of Chariots of the Gods and is one of the first ancient aliens theorists out there, claims that these could be landing pads for UFOs. I don't know what kind of ship of any sort would land in this shape, but whatever. Next up, we have number stations. So number stations are the shortwave radio stations that do exactly what the name suggests. They just spew random numbers at generally predetermined times of the day. Many people have speculated on the purpose of these number stations, and the broadcasts themselves can sound very eerie and creepy, considering some of them have sounds like a robotic woman's voice, or generally just somebody's voice reading these numbers over and over and over again. However, it's generally accepted that these stations are used to transmit information to intelligence officers, spies, whatever you want to call them. They've also been used by cartels and gangs to do the same purpose, obviously send coded messages that are not easy to decipher. Next up, we have Oak Island. So Oak Island has become famous in recent years because there's a television show devoted to the search for whatever it might contain. But if you don't know, in the 1700s, a lot of people believe that the famous pirate Captain Kidd hid his treasure on the island, and from there many, many different theories have spun off. Some people believe that anything from the Ark of the Covenant to obviously a old pirate treasure is buried in this pit in the island. It's also been dubbed the Money Pit because over the years many, many people have tried to get to the bottom of this chasm in the island, but they've all been unfortunately unsuccessful, as there's many fail-safes in this pit in the island to prevent anybody from getting to the bottom of it, which is kind of the mystery in and of itself of why is it so difficult to get into this pit, because if you go too far, the ocean outside will flood it. It's a very fascinating mystery, and something that I could see if I had the amount of money that some of these people do, I might sink it all into this thing too. Next up, we have the infamous Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which we brought around 1,600 Nazi scientists from Germany at the end of World War II to America. Many of the scientists we brought over were involved in aeronautics and rocketry, the most famous of which is Wernher von Braun, who is credited as one of the fathers of NASA and is often credited as being the reason we were able to land a man on the moon. Operation Paperclip is very famous in conspiracy circles and is one of those kind of founding ideas in modern conspiracy thought. So if you haven't heard of Operation Paperclip, I suggest that even if you do a little bit of research into the people that we brought over, you can see some of the stuff they did in Nazi Germany, which is very uncool, and that gets into a whole debate. But Operation Paperclip, a very suspect operation the United States did.
Next up, we have the Overton Bridge. So the Overton Bridge is a bridge located in Scotland that was built in 1895. The reason the bridge is on this iceberg is because of the odd phenomenon of dogs when crossing this bridge seem to jump off. Since the 1950s, at least 50 dogs have perished from jumping off this bridge, and another 600 have also jumped off but survived. A lot of people have different theories on to why the dogs do this. Some people think it could be the foliage of the bridge and local animals' scent being under the bridge in the ravine, leading to dogs believing it's not a far jump, jumping off to find whatever animal it might be, and unfortunately, having an accident. While others subscribe to the idea that it could be some kind of paranormal phenomenon. A lot of people in the local area believe the bridge is possessed by spirits that trick these animals and try to trick people into jumping off this bridge. There have been a number of other incidents at the bridge. In 1994, a man threw his 2-week-old son off the bridge because he believed that the boy was going to grow up to be a devil or the devil incarnate. He was a paranoid schizophrenic and later taken to a mental hospital, but as you can see, there's a lot of weird energy around this bridge. Next up, we have Paula Jean Weldon. So Paula Jean Weldon was an American college student who disappeared while hiking on Vermont's Long Trail in 1946. After finishing her shift at a dining hall on campus, she went back to her room, changed into hiking clothes, didn't take any kind of provisions with her, didn't take any extra money or anything like that, and then hitched a ride to the start of the trail. From there, many different people said they saw her walking on the trail, stopped and chatted with her, but when night came, and obviously the next day, she never showed up at class. So from that point on, an investigation was launched to see where she could have gone. There was a giant manhunt, including many people in the community, as well as the local sheriff's office and even the National Guard, but unfortunately no signs of her were ever found. There were a few suspects in the case. A man named Fred Gadet, who was having an argument with his girlfriend when they said they saw Paula Jean hiking on the trail. After they split from one another, he had a couple of different interpretations of what he did after that. He said that he went up the trail. He said that he went to a cabin, and his story was constantly changing. He even told his friends one night that he knew where she was buried, so definitely good suspect in my estimation. But like I said, nothing ever came of these investigations. It was criticized that the sheriff's office and everybody else involved did a poor job investigating it, which is why they founded the Vermont State Police, which did not exist before this. Also, this area that she disappeared in, the Bennington area, was dubbed the Bennington Triangle because between 1945 and 1950, an odd amount of people went missing in this area. Next up, we have the Philosopher's Stone. So the Philosopher's Stone is this idea in alchemy that you can find this powder, this tincture, or whatever you want to call it, that can turn base metals into precious ones like gold and silver. Some in alchemy circles also believe that it can be used to create this elixir of life that can either cure illness, prolong your life, maybe indefinitely, like I mentioned earlier with the Count of Saint Germain, who's believed to have found this Philosopher's Stone. People also believe that it could bring about spiritual revitalization, basically the holy grail of alchemy. Next up, we have Possibly in Michigan. So Possibly in Michigan is a short film created by a woman named Cecilia Condit that has recently gained popularity on platforms like TikTok as well as YouTube. In the short film, we follow two women who are being stalked by a uncanny-looking man named Arthur. As far as this being on this iceberg, it's just plainly a bizarre video, and I'd recommend you go watch the full thing. You can find the whole thing on YouTube. I'll put a link to it in the description below. It's very well done and very unsettling. Robert the Doll. So Robert the Doll was a doll given to a man by the name of Eugene Robert Otto in the early 1900s by a servant of the family. This servant allegedly didn't like the family. I couldn't imagine why, maybe because she's referred to as a servant in all of these stories, but this servant apparently cursed the doll with voodoo magic, black magic, something of the sort, and the doll began to wreak havoc on the family. So the haunting allegedly started one night when Eugene was sleeping. He woke up to find the doll at the foot of his bed, and then things started flying around the room. His mother attempted to get into the room, but the door was locked. When she finally was able to enter the room, she found her son, Eugene, crying on the floor, with the room completely a mess. And the strange activity didn't stop there. The parents would often hear the boy conversing with the doll, and they would hear another person's voice answer him when he would talk. They would see the expressions on the doll change when they would say different things about it. After all this strange activity, the family locked the doll in the attic, where it would escape several times. They would find it looking out windows of the house, and every time they would just lock it back in the attic instead of killing it with fire like any normal human being would. Jean Robert Otto died in 1974, and like a script of a horror movie, a new family moved into the house, and of course the doll was still in the attic. So the young girl, the daughter of the family, found the doll in the attic, began to play with it, and the cycle repeated itself again. The family eventually gave the doll to the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where many employees of the museum have stated that they've seen the facial expressions of the doll change and have reported various other events of paranormal activity. And again, nobody has destroyed the doll. It's a doll, destroy it. Any of these cases, Annabelle, Robert the doll, just kill it. Next up we have Roland T. Owen in room 1046. So on January 2nd, 1935, a man going by the name Roland T. Owen checked into the Hotel President in Kansas City, Missouri. Over the course of the next few days, a lot of weird things would happen with Roland in his hotel room. Staff would come to check on him and find him fully clothed, laying in bed, or they would find him just simply sitting in a chair in the room in the dark. Many different staff members said that they heard him conversating with another man in the room. All of this strangeness culminated on January 4th when staff found Roland in his room with what appeared to be strangulation marks on his neck, as well as stab wounds in his chest, one of which punctured his lung. When asked, who did this to you, he responded, nobody. He died shortly after midnight in the Kansas City hospital. After his death, it was hard to find a next of kin, which led people to believe that he could have been using an alias. His funeral was actually paid for by an anonymous donor who sent flowers to the funeral under the name Louis. A year and a half after the death, a woman named Ruby Ogletree identified the man as her son Artemis. Ruby Ogletree said that her son Artemis had left a year before to travel the world. Specifically, he was going to go to California. After this, she got postcards from different places like Cairo stating that he had been there. However, there's no records that Roland, or Artemis I should say, actually went to these places. And from there, really, this one is just one of those mysteries that just keeps going and keeps going. To this day, the Kansas City police actually still have this investigation open. There's little pieces of evidence that are found every now and again. But the mystery of Roland T. Owen in room 1046 is such a deep one. I'd recommend doing your own research on this topic. But yeah, that's Roland T. Owen. Next up, we have the Russian sleep experiments. So the Russian sleep experiments is a creepypasta that tells the tale of these 5 Soviet prisoners that were exposed to this sleep-inhibiting gas in Soviet Russia in 1947. According to the story, these prisoners were put in a chamber and exposed to this obviously sleep-depriving gas, and after at least 15 days, the researchers found that these prisoners had pulled their own organs out, had cannibalized themselves, and done all kinds of crazy things. And as the story goes on, more and more terrifying events unfold. I don't want to ruin the whole story. I'll put a link to it below, but more than likely, the validity of this is it's probably just a creepypasta. It was posted in 2010 by a user by the name of Orange Soda on the Creepypasta Wiki. But like I said, I'll post the entire thing down below. I definitely recommend reading it. It is a very good horror story. Next up, we have Skull and Bones. So Skull and Bones, also known as the Order 322, and the Brotherhood of Death, is a undergraduate senior secret society at Yale University. The Skull and Bones was formed in 1832 and has many powerful members, one of which being William Howard Taft, one of the presidents of the United States, whose father was actually one of the founders of the Skull and Bones, as well as both George H.W. Bush and George Bush, as well as John Kerry, who was the Secretary of State and a presidential candidate who actually ran against George W. Bush in one of the elections, as well as many, many other people. I mean, I can't really get into all of them, but businessmen, politicians, etc., which has led a lot of people to believe in a lot of conspiracy theories about the Skull and Bones, which in my opinion are kind of founded conspiracy theories, considering, all of these people were in a secret society together, so of course they're gonna help each other succeed in life. There's also many, many rumors about some acts that people would have to do in the Skull and Bones. Some of these acts I don't think I can get into on YouTube, but let's just say they would have you perform certain actions that they could then blackmail you for the rest of your career by having footage of you doing said acts. So, the Skull and Bones, a very real secret society that probably deserves a lot of the conspiracies surrounding it. Next up, we have the Solway Firth photo. So, the Solway Firth photo, also known as the Solway Firth Spaceman, was a photo taken by Jim Templeton of his daughter on May 22nd, 1964. This photo was taken, and for some reason, when I talk about locations in England, there's like 5 names associated with it, but for accuracy, the photo was taken on Burgh Marsh near the Burgh by Sands, overlooking the Solway Firth in Cumbria, England. Upon noticing what looks like a man in a spacesuit behind his daughter, he had this photo published in newspapers, and it quickly became popular with UFOologists. Many people have speculated what this weird figure could be, who Jim Templeton said he did not see at the time of taking the photo. Some people believe it could be an alien or some kind of apparition, where a lot of people more rightly assume that it could have just been his wife taken from behind with her wearing some kind of hat. Either way, it's definitely an odd photo, but I have a hard time believing that you wouldn't see a spaceman behind your daughter if you took the picture, but who am I? I don't want to ruin the picture. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, but the Solway Firth photo. Next up, we have spontaneous human combustion. So, like the name suggests, it's when a person spontaneously combusts, when they are lit on fire and die by fire without any kind of external accelerant or ignition. One of the first cases we know of this came in 1746 with a woman by the name of Countess Cornelia Zangrati Bundy, who was an Italian noblewoman. Yeah, I know I probably messed that name up, but she was an Italian noblewoman who died by this means. Other than her, there are many, many other cases of this happening, but there seem to be similar factors in all of these cases, mainly that the people are alcoholics, that they're generally elderly females, that usually the hands and feet fall off and are not burned along with the rest of the body, and that the fire has not caused a lot of damage to other things around the area. Like if they're sitting in a chair, the chair is usually not completely burnt up. And if you know anything about disposing of a body with fire, which you shouldn't, but if you do, I guess, crematoriums, where obviously you would cremate a person, burn at a very, very high temperature, and something as simple as, lighting a person on fire with even gasoline or something horrific like that would not completely destroy the entire body, like is the case in a lot of these spontaneous human combustion stories. So there you have it, spontaneous human combustion, a very, very odd phenomenon. Next up, we have the phenomenon of stairs in the woods. So this one refers to the fact that many people have found these odd staircases in the woods, completely out of place with nothing else around them. A lot of this seems to have come from a Reddit post in 2019, where a user at the time posted a picture of stairs in the woods and questioned, why are these here? And a lot of other people said that they had found similar staircases in the woods with no apparent explanation for their reason to be there. Some explanations for why these staircases are here is probably the most logical explanation that there used to be a structure in these areas that deteriorated, leaving only the staircase behind, but it's still odd that only the staircase was left behind. And as far as characteristics of these stairs in the woods, this is all unconfirmed, but according to people who find these staircases, they say that they're usually fairly clean of vegetation and other things that you would expect to grow on these stairs. They're also allegedly in places where people have recently disappeared. A lot of people believe that the source of this phenomenon could be that these stairs are gateways, or that they could be used in satanic rituals or any other sort of ritual. There's also some alleged testimonies of people who have found these stairs. In one story in the Philippines, a man found these stairs. He said that he walked up the stairs and it took him a few seconds, whatever, to go up the stairs, but on the way back down, he said that 5 years had passed. So this is something I had never heard of in my entire life, but that's the stairs in the woods phenomenon. Next up, we have streetlight interference. So streetlight interference, or high voltage syndrome, refers to a claimed ability by some individuals to turn streetlights or outside security lights, what have you, on and off while passing by them. Believers in this idea claim that they are able to walk by these lights without even thinking of it and have these lights turn off and on, and that it happens an unusual amount of times than chance would be able to explain. People who believe in this idea think that it could happen because we have some sort of energy inside of us or some kind of static electricity that is able to turn these lights on and off when you pass by them. So while there are a lot of people that believe this could be some kind of paranormal phenomenon, others who have researched this topic state that there's absolutely no correlation between certain people's claimed ability to do this and it actually being witnessed under any kind of scrutiny. Next up, we have the Texarkana Phantom Killer. So the Texarkana Phantom Killer was a suspected serial killer who, between February 22nd and May 3rd, 1946, attacked 8 different people, killing 5 of them. All of these attacks took place in the Texarkana region between Texas and Arkansas and set the entire area into a massive frenzy, with people buying stores out of guns and ammunition, people patrolling the streets at night, and even local youths trying to lure the killer into traps. It basically made the entire place lose its mind. There's some debate still on whether some of the first attacks and the later attacks were by the same people. There was one main suspect in these cases, a man by the name of Yul Swinney, who does seem like he more than likely committed at least some of these attacks. However, his wife, who initially outed him as the killer, refused to testify against him, and he was later put in jail for a completely separate crime. Besides Yul Swinney, there was about 9 other suspects that were taken fairly seriously as possibly being the Phantom Killer. However, obviously, we still don't know who the killer was. It's one of the most terrifying crime sprees in American history, in my opinion, just based off the descriptions that were given by the survivors of these attacks of what the Texarkana Phantom Killer looked like, which you can see a description of right here. So there you have it, the Texarkana Phantom Killer. Thunderbirds. So thunderbirds are these cryptozoological creatures associated with these large bird-like animals that live anywhere from North Canada to Central America. Stories of thunderbirds have existed for a long time in North America, with Native Americans recounting tales of these enormous eagles that were strong enough to carry whales back to their nests. Since then, as long as American pioneers have went west, there have been reports of these gigantic thunderbirds that people have seen and even been attacked by. One of the most famous thunderbird sightings was in 1977 in Lawndale, Illinois. At the time, a young boy by the name of Martin Lowe was playing outside when he was attacked by 2 of these supposed thunderbirds and was even carried off by one of them until his mother came out and chased the bird away. Several eyewitnesses who saw this attack occur were able to give descriptions of these birds, saying that they had 7.5 foot long bodies, about a 9 foot wingspan, as well as a 6-inch hooked beak, as well as many long, terrifying talons. Thunderbirds are just another of these cryptozoological creatures that occur in so many different cultures around the world. It's very similar to the roke, I believe is how you pronounce it, in Middle Eastern mythology. So maybe there's something here, but it is odd that all of these different people report these massive, massive creatures. Next up, we have Upsweep, Bloop, and Julia. So Upsweep, Bloop, and Julia are all names given to these unidentified sounds that have been recorded by NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This one is Bloop. This one is believed by NOAA to be an ice quake, maybe a large iceberg that has scraped the ocean floor somehow and created this noise, but they're not entirely certain of that. This one is Julia. The reasoning for this one is very similar to the Bloop. It's believed to be an iceberg that ran aground in Antarctica, but the one that really gets to me is Upsweep. There's this one. This sound has actually been present since at least 1991. It reaches its peak in the springtime and fall, and to this day they're not entirely certain what it is. So there's obviously a lot of speculation of what these could be, from obviously ice quakes to, in the case of the upsweep, it could be volcanic activity, we don't know, but there's other people that would also like to speculate that it could be sea monsters or, underwater UFOs, what have you. But for me, the ocean's pretty terrifying, so the thought of something so large that it could create these noises and not be some kind of natural phenomenon is terrifying. Next up, we have the Voynich manuscript. So the Voynich manuscript is an illustrated codex that has been written in some sort of unknown language that has been carbon dated to have been made in the early 15th century. The style of the illustrations in the codex, as well as the writing, has been determined that it could have been composed in Italy during the Italian Renaissance. However, the origin, the authorship, or purpose of the manuscript still remains unknown to this day. The manuscript currently consists of around 240 pages. However, there is evidence that there could have been some pages removed from it. It contains a bunch of really fantastical illustrations showing people, fake plants, as well as astrological symbols. It gets the name Voynich manuscript after the man who found it, a man named Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased the book in 1912. It now is owned by Yale University, who purchased it in 1969, and you can actually read the entirety. You can't read it, nobody can read it, but you can see the manuscript in its entirety on Yale's website. I'll actually put a link to that in the description below as well. There's been various hypotheses through the years of what this could possibly be, what the purpose of this manuscript is. Some people believe it could be some kind of unknown language. However, that's sort of unlikely that we would have no idea of a language that was written down in 1400, though it is entirely possible. But others believe it could be some kind of code or cipher or some other kind of cryptography that is yet to be solved. Many people have attempted to solve it, such as code breakers in both world wars, but nobody has been successful. Although some have claimed to be, those have turned out to be fraudulent. There are still others that believe it could be a hoax. However, if this is a hoax, it is an extremely intricate hoax, and somebody could have just created this in the 15th century to mess with us in the future, and if they did, shout out to that guy, I suppose, but that's the Voynich manuscript. Next up, we have the Vrillon incident. So this refers to the Southern television broadcast interruption that occurred on November 26, 1977. During a news broadcast at about 5 p.m. that day, a man interrupted the signal and said his name was Vrillon and he was part of Ashtar Galactic Command. There's several different transcripts of what people believe was said during the signal interruption by Vrillon, but the basic gist of it is they said that humanity had to abandon their weapons so that they could participate in a future awakening and achieve a higher state of evolution. After around 6 minutes, the broadcast was returned to normal, but by that point the damage had been done, as many concerned viewers of the program called into the station to ask what the hell was going on. As far as an explanation goes, some people still to this day buy into the fact that it could have been some kind of alien leader sending us a message. However, the transmission tower that was used to be hijacked to put out this broadcast was very open to being hijacked as far as I understand it, so it's not surprising that somebody did it eventually. However, obviously whoever did this signal interruption was never caught, so it could have been some alien overlord or just some random guy, but either way, it definitely scared the hell out of people at the time, so there you go, the Vrillon incident. Next up, we have Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm? This refers to graffiti that showed up in 1994 after, in 1993, 4 children found the skeletal remains of a woman in a wych elm in, here we go for England again, Hagley Wood, Hagley, part of the estate of Hagley Hall in Warwickshire, England. After these young children found the skeletal remains in this tree, they notified the local police, who, upon investigation, found obviously the same thing in this tree and noticed a piece of fabric in the skull that would have indicated that this person probably died by suffocation. Police were able to determine generally what the woman may have looked like based on the items she had with her. However, as World War II was going on and there were many, many missing people, they were unfortunately never able to identify who the woman might have been. Then, as I said earlier, in 1944, a graffiti message showed up at a wall in Birmingham that said, "Who put Bella down the wych elm - Hagley Wood?" So while there's many different theories of who this woman could have been and who could have done this, obviously it still remains unsolved. So who put Bella in the wych elm? We don't know. Next up, we have Worlds.com Cult. So this one refers to one of the first 3D chat sites that came out in 1995 called Worlds.com. It was a precursor to things like Second Life. While it seems to be largely abandoned, it's in fact not, as obviously Worlds Inc., who runs this, still keeps up the servers and the domain and all of that. There's still a small active player base, but a lot of the worlds in this website are very eerie and creepy, right? They have a lot of religious symbolism. A lot of it looks like people just putting their insane mental illness into this game, and the small player base is very cult-like, as the title of this entry would imply. There's some users who, if you interact with them, they can take over your chat log, they can take over your computer, they can track you, do all kinds of very odd, weird stuff. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to this website, but if you do want to see a far longer and more in-depth explanation, I know Nexpo made like 30-40 minute long video on this, so I'll put a link to that in the description. But yeah, worlds.com, a old 90s chat room that is still active today with some of the weirdest shit that you can find on the internet. Next up, we have the World War II Black Book. So this one refers to a secret list created by the Nazis of prominent British residents that they were going to arrest when they invaded Britain in 1940. Contained in this book were 2,800 names of different British residents, like I said, as well as members of certain institutions the Nazis saw as very anti-Nazi, like the Masonic Lodges, the Church of England, and obviously the Boy Scouts for some reason, which I'm sure they were anti-Nazi, but not quite as high as the other two in my opinion. Obviously, this book was never utilized as the Nazis failed to invade England, and it was discovered in Berlin in 1995, much to the amusement of many of the people listed in this book. Yay Video Games. So Yay Video Games refers to a Reddit user by the name of Yay Video Games, who appeared to go insane over the course of 4,000 comments that always seemed to contain some variation of Ubisoft goes Steamworks, bye bye, always on DRM. All of this started on September 8th, 2010, when a user posted on Reddit asking people what their favorite mods were for the video game Oblivion. Yay Video Games then responded with this comment over here. After posting this comment, Yay Video Games then went on to spam the thread with, as I said earlier, Ubisoft goes Steamworks, bye bye, always on DRM. Yay Video Games would then go on to post these strange, surreal pictures, as well as posting handwritten notes of him saying the same thing, the Ubisoft goes Steamworks, bye bye, always on DRM. Yay Video Games eventually stopped posting, and there's an entire subreddit dedicated to all this weird stuff that he posted, which 3 years ago, a user posted saying his name was Luke and that he was Yay Video Games' friend in real life. In his post, Luke said that him and Yay Video Games were friends in real life, and that Yay Video Games' real name was Leiden. He said that Leiden suffered from a chronic illness and unfortunately had to isolate himself, usually in his house, which is most likely what led to these insane ramblings on Reddit. Luke then closed out his post by saying that unfortunately Leiden had passed away in 2015, which is why he stopped posting. So it's a very unfortunate scenario. Somebody else posted on Yay Video Games subreddit pictures of Leiden, so whether he knew it or not, he's now enshrined in internet history forever. Finally, we have the Zuma satellite. So the Zuma satellite is a classified United States government satellite that was launched by SpaceX on January 8th, 2018. So this one is a really weird one because it was a project by the National Reconnaissance Office and is classified, so we do not know what the purpose of the satellite was. And according to many media sources, as well as some government sources, unnamed of course, the project was a failure and the satellite actually re-entered the atmosphere. That being said, the government has never stated that that is what happened, right? They've never said the project was a failure, and they never said that the satellite re-entered the atmosphere in any official capacity. So we don't really know what happened to the satellite, really. Is it up there? Is it not? What's the purpose of it? It's a reconnaissance satellite that a lot of people say isn't up there now. So I don't know with this one. This is one of those ones that's very, very bizarre to me, and it's a fairly new, unsolved mystery. So keep your eye in the sky. This could be a giant laser weapon. Probably not, but, the Zuma satellite. And that will do it for Tier 2 of the complete Unsolved Iceberg. I want to say thanks to everybody who's supporting these videos. It means a lot to me. I'm going to try to get them out more frequently than I have been. I want to do more content in between, which is why this last part took so long, but the next part should be up in a couple of weeks, if not sooner. If you enjoy this content, I do go live on TikTok Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and yeah, I know it's TikTok, but people seem to respond well to those streams. We do a call-in format, so if you have a creepy story, if you've ever experienced something unknown, or you have a conspiracy take, whatever it might be, whatever you think applies, call in, join the Discord. We'd love to have you. So again, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. I know I didn't say that up top, but subscribe, like, and watch the other parts. This is part 4. If you're just watching this one, there's 3 other videos you could be watching with so much more great content in it. So thanks guys, see you next time, bye.